In the early months of 1942, the world's oceans became silent graveyards. Beneath the waves, a deadly chess match unfolded between Allied submarines and Axis patrols. The Atlantic convulsed with conflict as convoys were hunted, ships torpedoed, and lives lost without a trace. The submarine war was not fought in open battlefields, but in the cold, crushing dark, where men relied on sonar echoes and instinct to survive. It was here that the most dangerous patrols of the Second World War began. Missions so perilous that some boats would simply vanish, leaving only mystery in their wake. The United States Navy, still reeling from Pearl Harbor, had rushed its submarine fleet into action. By mid-1942, new classes of attack subs, the Gato and Tambor types, were prowling the Pacific, while Britain's Royal Navy deployed T-class and U-class boats across the Mediterranean and North Atlantic. Each crew, barely 100 men, carried enough fuel, food, and torpedoes for weeks of isolation. Inside their steel hulls, temperatures could exceed 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Air turned foul. Silence was survival. Every sound could mean detection. Every mechanical click a death sentence. Remember, one submarine commander warned his men before departing Pearl Harbor, "You're the hunter and the hunted, at the same time." His words would echo through the entire Allied fleet. Submarine warfare in WWII was unlike any other. The Germans, with their infamous wolf packs, had turned the Atlantic into a killing ground. Merchant convoys en route to Britain were routinely ambushed by packs of U-boats communicating through encrypted Enigma channels. The Allies struck back with their own silent killers. American and British submarines were tasked not just with sinking ships, but with cutting off supply lines, gathering intelligence, and inserting commandos behind enemy lines. These were missions wrapped in secrecy and often tragedy. By March 1942, reports of Allied submarines disappearing began to spread quietly through naval channels. Boats that had reported their positions days earlier simply stopped communicating. Wartime censorship prevented the news from reaching the public, but among naval families, whispers grew. A husband's last letter, a commander's final message, a patrol overdue by weeks. Some were presumed sunk by depth charges, others by mines, yet no wreckage was found. It was as if the sea itself had swallowed them whole. In Washington and London, intelligence officers pored over intercepted messages, searching for clues. One classified report from the US Navy's Office of Naval Intelligence noted, "Enemy anti-submarine activity at record intensity. Several boats overdue, fate unknown." But without physical evidence, every loss became an open-ended story, a ghost entry on the charts of naval history. Amid the growing list of disappearances, 5 cases would come to define the silent peril of the submarine war. Each involved a crew of trained men, advanced Allied submarines, and missions so hazardous that even their orders were classified. Their patrol zones stretched from the icy Aleutians to the warm Aegean, from the coast of China to the dark depths of the Adriatic. And for decades, their fates remained hidden, locked within the seabed, guarded by pressure and time. The story begins in the cold waters of the North Pacific, where the US submarine USS Grunion sailed on her maiden combat patrol in July 1942. She was a state-of-the-art Gato-class vessel equipped with the latest sonar and torpedo systems. Her commander, Lieutenant Commander Manata Bailey, was a decorated officer known for precision and calm under pressure. His orders: to disrupt Japanese supply lines and report enemy movements around the Aleutian Islands. The region was one of the most treacherous in the world, fog-bound, storm-lashed, and dotted with enemy-held islands. What happened next would baffle naval historians for over 60 years. The Grunion's last transmission, received on July 30, 1942, mentioned enemy destroyers operating nearby and a fierce engagement off Kiska Island. Then silence. No distress call, no wreckage, just an empty sea. In the following weeks, US naval stations tried repeatedly to reach the submarine. Nothing. Abele and his 70-man crew were declared missing, presumed lost. Wartime records listed the cause as enemy action, but there was no confirmation from Japanese sources. Some theorized a malfunction, others suspected a mine or friendly fire. Whatever the truth, it sank with the Grunion. Years later, when the war had long ended and peace returned to the Pacific, families of the lost submariners still searched for answers. Their sons and daughters grew up hearing stories of the Grunion, a ghost ship of the Aleutians. The ocean had kept its secret. For now, the missing Grunion would become the first in a tragic lineage of Allied submarines that vanished without explanation during World War II. Each loss carried its own mystery, its own unanswered questions, and as the Allied command expanded its reach into new theaters, from the Mediterranean to the South China Sea, more boats would follow the same silent path into oblivion. The story of these submarines, their missions, their crews, and their mysterious disappearances reveals not only the dangers of undersea warfare, but the human courage buried beneath the waves. Next, we turn to one of Britain's most haunting maritime mysteries, the disappearance of HMS Triumph, a submarine sent on a secret mission into the heart of occupied Greece, from which it would never return. The winter of 1942 was unforgiving across the Mediterranean. Cold winds swept over the Aegean Sea, and German patrol aircraft hunted relentlessly for any sign of Allied movement. It was under these conditions that the Royal Navy submarine HMS Triumph vanished, one of Britain's most capable and daring boats, lost without a trace during a mission so secret that even her crew's families were not told her destination. MS Triumph was a T-class submarine, commissioned in 1939, built for both combat and covert operations. With her 84-man crew, 6 forward torpedo tubes, and the ability to dive to over 300 feet, she had already proven her worth in earlier patrols. Before her disappearance, Triumph had completed more than 20 successful missions, sinking Axis ships, laying mines, and transporting special operations agents to occupied territories. Her commander, Lieutenant John Simons Huddart, was regarded by the Admiralty as one of the most skilled submariners in the fleet, but even experience could not prepare his men for what awaited them in January 1942. Her mission was codenamed Operation Monte Cristo. Departing Alexandria, Egypt on December 26, 1941, Triumph carried not just her regular crew, but a small group of British commandos and intelligence officers. Their objective: infiltrate German-occupied Greece, deliver arms to local resistance groups, and extract Allied personnel trapped on the mainland. To maintain secrecy, all radio communication was forbidden except in emergencies. The crew knew this was no ordinary patrol. It was a silent, high-risk insertion behind enemy lines. By New Year's Day 1942, Triumph had reached the Greek coast. She surfaced under cover of darkness near the small island of Antiparos, where the commandos were successfully landed with their supplies. Local resistance members later recalled seeing the submarine's dim silhouette against the horizon, a fleeting image that would become their last. After the operation, Triumph was scheduled to return several days later to evacuate stranded agents and Allied soldiers, but she never came. At first, British Naval Command in Alexandria assumed Triumph had been delayed. Harsh winter storms had swept the Aegean, and communication with subs on covert missions was always uncertain. But as the days turned into weeks and no word arrived, concern deepened. On January 23, 1942, HMS Triumph was officially listed as overdue. A telegram was sent to families, a short, clinical message. "Regret to inform you, your husband's vessel has failed to return from patrol." Post-war records revealed that German forces in Greece had indeed increased anti-submarine patrols that week. Luftwaffe reconnaissance aircraft reported sighting a submarine periscope near Cape Sunion, close to Athens on January 9th. Depth charges were dropped, and oil was observed on the surface, but no confirmed kill. Another possibility emerged years later. Italian naval records mention minefields newly laid in the same area at the start of January. It is now believed Triumph may have struck one while attempting to exit the Aegean, her hull torn open in an instant. For decades, her fate remained uncertain. In British archives, notes from the Naval Intelligence Division showed frustration. One entry, dated February 1942, reads, "Triumph overdue. Believed lost to mine or enemy action. Last known position unconfirmed. Agents landed successfully. No extraction achieved." Those few lines summarized the loss of 84 men and the disappearance of a submarine whose mission would remain shrouded in wartime secrecy. Yet even amid the chaos of war, stories persisted. Greek villagers on nearby islands later spoke of hearing an explosion at sea that night. followed by debris washing ashore, pieces of timber, and an oil slick that lingered for days. None could confirm it was Triumph, but the timing aligned eerily with her planned return. The commando team she had landed survived for several weeks before being captured by Axis forces, never knowing that their rescuers had already perished beneath the waves. When peace finally came, HMS Triumph's name was inscribed on the Royal Navy Submarine Memorial at Gosport, but for her families there was no closure, no wreck, no grave. Commander Haddart's fiancée, who had waited through the war, wrote in a letter to the Admiralty in 1946, "If she is gone, at least tell me where the sea keeps her." The answer would not come for another 70 years. In 2022, a Greek research team led by diver Kostas Thoktorides announced the discovery of a submarine wreck lying 203 meters below the Aegean seabed, just off Cape Sonian. The vessel's dimensions, markings, and hull configuration matched HMS Triumph. She lay upright, intact, her hatches sealed. Inside, sonar scans showed no signs of escape, suggesting the crew never had a chance. After 8 decades, the mystery had finally yielded its answer, but not its peace. Still, one question remained. Why was Triumph so far from her intended patrol zone when she was lost? Had her orders changed mid-mission, or had she been forced off course by weather or pursuit? The official Royal Navy log remains silent. As one historian noted, "The sea does not give up her dead easily, but she sometimes whispers their stories." HMS Triumph. Its discovery reignited interest in other vanished submarines, particularly those lost in the Pacific, where the dangers were just as relentless and the mysteries even deeper. Next, we follow the story of USS Scorpion, SS-278, an American submarine that vanished in 1944 after reporting one last successful strike in the East China Sea, then disappearing forever. The year was 1944. The tide of the Pacific War had turned, but the dangers beneath the surface were greater than ever. The US Navy's submarine force, though small in number, had become one of America's deadliest weapons. Their patrols strangled Japan's maritime supply lines, sinking merchant convoys and warships with ruthless precision. But victory came at a terrible cost. The submarine campaign of World War II would claim the lives of over 3,500 American sailors. Many lost in boats that simply vanished, leaving only static-filled transmissions and empty coordinates. One of the most haunting of these disappearances was the USS Scorpion, SS-278. Commissioned in October 1942, Scorpion was a Gato-class submarine, 311 feet long, armed with 24 torpedoes, and capable of diving more than 300 feet. She was a formidable machine and had already made 3 successful war patrols under the command of Lieutenant Commander Maximilian G. Schmidt. Her early patrols in the East China Sea and Philippine waters earned her a reputation for aggression and accuracy. But her 4th patrol, in January 1944, would be her last, and the circumstances surrounding her disappearance would remain unsolved for generations. Scorpion departed Pearl Harbor on January 5, 1944, bound for Midway Island to refuel before continuing to her patrol area near the Yellow Sea, an expanse heavily mined by both sides and fiercely patrolled by Japanese anti-submarine forces. Her mission orders were simple but dangerous: disrupt Japanese shipping lanes between Japan, Korea, and China. Alongside her, the submarines Celian and Permit were assigned adjacent zones. Together, they form part of a broader strategy to choke off Japan's industrial lifelines. On January 27th, Scorpion sent a routine radio transmission. She had sunk 2 Japanese merchant vessels totaling 4,000 tons. The message was clear, calm, and professional. Commander Schmidt reported no damage or pursuit. It was her last confirmed contact. After that, she vanished into the deep. When Scorpion failed to report back by March, naval authorities listed her as overdue and presumed lost. The Navy's Board of Inquiry would later conclude, with limited evidence, that she had likely struck a mine in the East China Sea. Yet the record was vague, the coordinates uncertain, and no wreck was ever located. To this day, Scorpion's exact resting place remains unknown. What made her loss especially perplexing was the lack of any distress signal or post-war Japanese confirmation. Normally, if a submarine was sunk by depth charges or surface attack, enemy records would show corresponding actions. But Japanese archives, examined after 1945, contain no mention of such an engagement in Scorpion's area. Instead, they referenced heavy minefields laid along the Chinese coast in early 1944. Silent killers with no warning, capable of tearing open a submarine's pressure hull in an instant. One haunting clue emerged from the diary of a Japanese merchant captain operating in those waters. Dated February 1, 1944, he wrote, "Saw black oil slick spreading over the sea east of Shantung Peninsula. No ships nearby, possible mine explosion. No Allied forces were in that region at the time, except the Scorpion. Her crew of 77 men simply disappeared. No debris, no survivors. Families received the same stark telegram that countless others would. The Navy Department deeply regrets to inform you that your husband is missing, following action in the performance of his duty and in the service of his country." Beneath those words lay the unspoken truth that the sea had claimed yet another boat, leaving behind only grief and questions. Over the years, various theories have surfaced. Some suggested a mechanical failure, a battery explosion, or torpedo malfunction, both common dangers in the confined world of WWII submarines. Others believe she may have been caught in her own torpedo's wake, a known but rare hazard among early Gato-class vessels. Still, the mine theory remains the most likely. The East China Sea, even today, is littered with wartime explosives, silent and lethal. In 2006, a joint American-Japanese oceanographic expedition attempted to locate the wreck using sonar mapping. They identified several objects consistent with submarine debris, but none matched Scorpion's unique dimensions. The mystery deepened further when one of the sonar readings revealed what appeared to be a collapsed hull buried in silt, tantalizing evidence that remains unconfirmed. For naval historians, the disappearance of the USS Scorpion is more than a technical puzzle. It's a human tragedy frozen in time. Among her crew were young men barely in their 20s, radio men, torpedo officers, cooks, engineers, each performing their duty in a steel vessel navigating through darkness and danger. Their letters home stopped abruptly in January 1944. One crewman, motor machinist's mate First Class Henry Mankin, had written to his wife days before departure. "The ocean's wide, but I'll find my way back." He never did. The loss of Scorpion forced the Navy to re-examine its patrol routes and minefield intelligence. By late 1944, new navigational charts and sonar suite protocols were introduced to minimize risks in mined waters, improvements born from hard lessons and vanished boats. Yet the Pacific remained merciless today. The name Scorpion is etched into the walls of the U.S. Submarine Memorial in Pearl Harbor, alongside dozens of other submarines marked simply as still on patrol. Each represents not only a machine lost, but an entire crew entombed somewhere in the deep. As the Allied submarine offensive continued, more boats would disappear under equally mysterious circumstances, including the Royal Navy's HMS Regulus, lost in the Adriatic Sea during a secret mining mission. Her story, too, would fade into silence, buried under layers of secrecy and time. Autumn 1940. The Mediterranean had become a sea of death. Axis and Allied submarines prowled its blue depths, turning narrow straits and coastal passages into invisible minefields. For the Royal Navy, controlling this vital artery meant survival, and every patrol came with extraordinary risk. Among the boats that vanished during these early years was HMS Regulus, a British submarine whose disappearance remains one of the oldest unsolved mysteries of the Mediterranean campaign. MS Regulus was part of the R class. Built in the mid-1930s, a smaller pre-war design, less sophisticated than the newer T-class boats, but still deadly in skilled hands. She had already seen combat, disrupting Italian supply lines to North Africa and mining Axis-held waters. In November 1940, under the command of Lieutenant Commander Frederick H. E. St. John, Regulus was ordered on a mission that would push her luck to its limits. The mission was classified as Special Operations Mining, targeting the Strait of Otranto, a narrow corridor between southern Italy and Albania that served as a crucial route for Axis naval convoys. The objective, to lay a minefield near enemy-controlled waters and retreat undetected. It was one of the most dangerous operations in submarine warfare, requiring precise navigation, steady nerves, and absolute silence. Regulus departed from Alexandria, Egypt, on November 18, 1940. She was never seen again. The Admiralty expected her return signal by the end of the month. It never came. At first, British command assumed delays due to enemy patrols or mechanical issues. But as days turned into weeks, the reality grew grim. By December, the Royal Navy officially listed Regulus as missing, presumed lost. No distress messages had been received. No oil slicks, debris, or survivors were ever found. What happened to HMS Regulus became a wartime enigma, an open wound for the submarine service. Early theories suggested she had struck an Italian minefield while exiting the Adriatic. The waters she was assigned to were known to be heavily mined by both sides, with constantly shifting coordinates due to currents and redeployments. One misplaced waypoint could mean instant destruction. Yet, post-war analysis found something odd. Italian naval records from that month listed no reports of detonations or submarine engagements in the area. If Regulus had been lost to a mine, why was there no trace? To understand the risk, one must imagine the environment she faced. The Otranto Strait, only about 45 miles wide, was a choke point bristling with danger. Italian destroyers, the Turbine and Seta, patrolled its approaches daily. Coastal aircraft from Brindisi scoured the waters for any hint of periscopes. At night, spotlights swept the horizon. To navigate through such conditions undetected, Regulus would have traveled at periscope depth during the day and surfaced only to recharge batteries under cover of darkness. Every hour increased the chance of discovery. A fragmentary report from British naval intelligence, dated November 30, 1940, recorded that an Italian submarine, Filippo Corridoni, claimed to have sighted a periscope near the Otranto mine barrier 3 days earlier. Depth charges were dropped, but no wreckage confirmed. It remains unclear whether this encounter involved Regulus, but the timing fits her operational window precisely. The loss of Regulus struck the Royal Navy's Mediterranean command deeply. She had been a veteran boat, her crew seasoned and respected. Commander St. John, only 32 years old, had already earned distinction for earlier patrols off Libya. Letters from his men, later recovered from family archives, spoke of high morale and confidence before their final mission. One engineer wrote, "We'll be back by Christmas. The sea's rough, but we've beaten worse." Those words would never reach home. After the war, when Allied forces gained access to Italian naval archives, investigators revisited Regulus' case. One theory emerged that she might have been the victim of her own mines. A rare but possible fate if mechanical failure or timing errors caused premature detonation. Another possibility suggested an uncharted Axis minefield closer to Albania, where strong currents might have swept her off course. The Adriatic, shallow in some regions but treacherously deep in others, offered countless places for a submarine to vanish without trace. In 2019, an Italian research team scanning the seabed near the Otranto Strait detected an anomaly resembling a submarine hull approximately 90 meters below the surface. Measurements were consistent with the dimensions of an R-class boat, and nearby magnetic readings hinted at unexploded mines. Yet due to depth, silt, and wartime ordnance risk, no dive has confirmed the wreck's identity. The discovery reignited debate but offered no closure. Only another chapter in the enduring mystery of HMS Regulus. For the families, the lack of finality was the cruelest burden. Unlike surface ships, submarines left no witnesses, no survivors to tell the story. Every unanswered loss became a silent monument to courage and uncertainty. Commander St. John's sister, interviewed in 1947, said simply, "They went down doing their duty. We can't ask for more, but I wish we knew how." The disappearance of HMS Regulus underscored the unforgiving nature of undersea warfare, where a single navigational misjudgment or unseen explosive could erase an entire crew in seconds. The Mediterranean, once called Mare Nostrum by the Axis, had claimed her too, joining the countless steel tombs resting on its floor. As 1944 drew to a close, both the Allies and Axis had lost dozens of submarines to similar fates, swallowed by the sea, their missions erased by time. Yet, even amid tragedy, each disappearance pushed the boundaries of naval intelligence and technology. New sonar systems, safer mining mechanisms, and coded patrol reports would evolve directly from these sacrifices. Still, for all their technological advancement, the mystery of the missing submarines endured. The Regulus, the Triumph, the Grunion, the Scorpion. Each loss whispered the same question: how could so much courage vanish so completely? In the years that followed, the Allies' search for missing boats turned from the Mediterranean to the cold depths of the Pacific once again. And there, in one of the most treacherous patrol zones of the Northern Ocean, another vanished submarine would emerge as both legend and warning: the USS Grunion. The Northern Pacific is a desolate expanse, vast, cold, and merciless. It was here, amid fog-shrouded islands and volcanic seas, that one of the most haunting submarine mysteries of World War II unfolded. The USS Grunion, SS-216, a newly commissioned American submarine, embarked on her first war patrol in 1942. She was young, her crew fresh-faced and eager, her commander among the Navy's most promising officers. Within weeks, she would vanish without a trace. What happened to her would remain an unsolved question for more than 6 decades. The USS Grunion was a Gato-class submarine, a sleek, powerful vessel 3 and 11 feet long and armed with 10 torpedo tubes. Commissioned in April 1942, she was commanded by Lieutenant Commander Mannet Lincoln Abel, a calm, methodical officer known for his precision and composure. His crew of 70 men represented the best of a new generation of submariners, trained, disciplined, and proud. They had drilled for months off the California coast before joining the Pacific Fleet. Their first combat assignment would take them to one of the most remote and dangerous regions of the war, the Aleutian Islands. In mid-1942, the Japanese had occupied the islands of Attu and Kiska, launching bombing raids against the American outpost at Dutch Harbor, Alaska. The campaign was brutal and frigid, a forgotten front of World War II fought in fog, ice, and isolation. The Grunion's orders were clear: patrol the waters near Kiska, attack enemy shipping, and gather intelligence for an impending American counteroffensive. It was a perilous task. The Aleutians were notorious for treacherous seas, magnetic interference that distorted instruments, and unpredictable enemy patrols. On July 10, 1942, the Grunion departed Dutch Harbor and began her first and only patrol. Within days, she made contact with enemy vessels, sinking 2 small Japanese patrol boats and damaging a third. Her performance impressed the fleet command, proof of both the submarine's capabilities and her commander's nerve. But then, as July drew to a close, her tone changed. A final radio message from Commander Abele, received on July 30th, reported heavy anti-submarine activity near Kiska and numerous depth charges. It ended with a single chilling sentence: "I'm going down to investigate." No transmission followed. Days later, the Grunion was declared overdue. The Navy scoured the surrounding waters, but no trace was found. There was no oil slick, no debris, no survivors. She had simply disappeared. Her loss was recorded as cause unknown. For the families of the 70 men aboard, grief mingled with uncertainty. No one knew whether she had been sunk by enemy fire, struck a mine, or succumbed to mechanical failure. In the fog and cold of the Aleutians, even wreckage could vanish. In the aftermath, Japanese records offered few clues. Decades later, post-war analysis revealed a curious entry in an enemy report. A Japanese cargo ship, the Kano Maru, had been attacked by a submarine near Kiska on July 31, 1942. The vessel had reportedly fired back, scoring direct hits on the attacking submarine, but the account was vague, and historians debated whether it truly referred to the Grunion. Still, the coincidence was too striking to ignore. For decades, the Grunion remained one of the Pacific's many unsolved disappearances. In the late 1990s, renewed interest in her story came not from naval authorities, but from her commander's sons. Bruce, Brad, and John Abel, now grown men, had never forgotten their father's fate. Using newly available wartime documents and advances in sonar mapping, they launched a private search in the Aleutians. It was a mission driven not by military orders, but by family devotion. In 2006, after years of research and exploration, the Abele brothers team discovered a wreck near Kiska Island. Resting at a depth of 3,000 feet, the sonar images showed a submarine split into 2 sections, lying upright on the seabed. When cameras were lowered, the markings confirmed the impossible. The hull read SS-216. The USS Grunion had been found. Forensic analysis of the wreck revealed her final moments. One torpedo tube door appeared jammed open, suggesting a torpedo had misfired, possibly detonating prematurely. Evidence of internal damage and outward blown hatches indicated a catastrophic explosion from within. Experts theorized that during combat with Kano Maru, a malfunctioning torpedo may have ricocheted and exploded near the submarine's bow, fatally compromising her hull. She likely flooded within seconds, too fast for anyone to escape. The discovery brought long-awaited closure to the Abel family and to naval historians. The wreck was declared a war grave, undisturbed and sacred. The US Navy issued a statement in 2008. USS Grunion and her crew remain on eternal patrol, a testament to the courage of those who fought unseen beneath the waves. Yet the mystery retained an eerie quality. Why had Grunion's torpedoes malfunctioned? A problem seen in several US submarines during the early Pacific War. The answer lay in flawed magnetic detonators, which often caused premature explosions. The Navy would not fully resolve the issue until late 1943, too late for Grunion and her crew. In a letter written years after the discovery, Bruce Abel reflected, "We found her, but she was never lost to us. She was always there, under that sea, waiting." His words spoke not just for one family, but for every family whose loved ones vanished beneath wartime waters. The story of USS Grunion is one of bravery, tragedy, and technological failure, a reminder of how fragile survival was in the world of undersea warfare. She joins a silent fleet of lost submarines, each representing untold courage and unspoken sacrifice. But the mystery of the missing patrols doesn't end in the Aleutians. Across oceans, from the Aegean to the China Sea, dozens more Allied submarines remain missing, each a question mark on history's map. And as the war drew toward its close, the ocean still refused to give up its secrets. In our final chapter, we explore how modern technology, underwater archaeology, and the persistence of memory have begun to uncover what really happened to these submarines and the men who never came home. The war ended in 1945, but for many, closure never came. The oceans, which had swallowed hundreds of submarines during the conflict, kept their silence. Beneath thousands of feet of water, in canyons, trenches, and silted seabeds, lay entire crews, their boats frozen in time, their patrol logs forever incomplete. The story of the missing submarines of World War II did not end with surrender. It evolved into one of the greatest ongoing historical investigations of the modern age. By the war's conclusion, the Allies had lost over 100 submarines, 52 from the United States Navy alone, each marked in official records as still on patrol. For decades, the names of these boats were read aloud each year at memorials in Groton, Gosport, and Pearl Harbor, but their fates remained unconfirmed. The missing included the Grunion, Triumph, Scorpion, Regulus, and dozens more like them, each representing not just tactical loss, but human stories erased by the sea. In the 1950s and 1960s, as sonar and deep diving technology advanced, the search for these submarines took on new life. Naval historians, engineers, and family members began piecing together fragmented clues, declassified reports, enemy records, survivor testimony, and weather logs. The ocean floor, once unreachable, became a field of discovery. Expeditions in the Mediterranean, Pacific, and Arctic began finding echoes of long-lost patrols. Corroded hulls, twisted propellers, silent compartments where men had fought to save their ship in the last desperate minutes. But even as technology advanced, the mysteries deepened. Many of the wrecks, when found, told conflicting stories, damage patterns that didn't match wartime records, positions that contradicted official patrol zones. In several cases, Allied submarines were found hundreds of miles from where they were thought to have been lost. It was as if the ocean had conspired to keep its own version of history. The case of the USS Grunion, rediscovered in 2006 by the family of her lost commander, reignited the global effort to locate other missing boats. Organizations like the Lost 52 project, founded by explorer Tim Taylor, began using autonomous underwater vehicles to scan the seafloor with laser precision. Their missions, blending engineering and remembrance, have since identified over a dozen American submarines once thought lost forever. Each discovery is treated not as an archaeological victory, but as the recovery of memory, the completion of a final mission. The wrecks are haunting. Many remain in perfect silence, preserved by the cold, their decks covered in silt and marine life. The hulls still bear the markings of their nations, the white lettering of SS or HMS, faintly visible beneath decades of corrosion. In some, the hatches are sealed, suggesting that crews went down fighting, refusing to abandon their boats. These are not just wrecks. They are underwater tombs, their steel shells echoing with the legacy of courage and sacrifice. Modern researchers have learned to read the seabed as historians once read documents. A single dented valve or ruptured torpedo hatch can reveal the final seconds of battle. In the case of HMS Triumph, discovered in 2022 near Cape Sunion, sonar imagery showed her lying upright, her escape hatches still locked. The evidence suggests a sudden detonation, possibly from a mine or internal malfunction, that gave the crew no time to react. Forensic archaeology now tells the story the sea once hid, and yet mysteries remain. The USS Scorpion, lost in 1944 in the East China Sea, has never been found. Her final message still stands as her epitaph. Sunk 2 ships, continuing patrol. Somewhere, beneath the shifting sands of the Pacific Shelf, she lies undisturbed, beyond the reach of sonar. HMS Regulus, too, has evaded definitive identification, though sonar echoes near the Otranto Strait suggest she may rest within a web of unexploded mines, a silent sentinel to a forgotten battle. As new generations of researchers probe deeper into the oceans, the line between history and memory grows faint. Each discovery rewrites a small part of the war and restores the humanity behind the statistics. One oceanographer described it best: "We're not searching for submarines, we're searching for stories, for men who never got to tell them." The legacy of these vanished patrols transcends warfare. They remind us that even in the most advanced and mechanized conflict of the 20th century, fate often rested on chance. A faulty torpedo, an unseen mine, a brief flicker on sonar. Beneath all the technology and tactics were human beings. Engineers, navigators, cooks, and young sailors who believed they would return home. Today, memorials across the world bear their names. Brass plaques, wreaths, and folded flags stand in place of gravestones. The phrase "on eternal patrol" has become sacred to submariners, a quiet acknowledgement that these men still serve, somewhere below the waves, guarding the secrets of the sea. From the Aleutians to the Aegean, from the East China Sea to the Adriatic, the missing submarines of World War II form a silent fleet, bound by honor, sacrifice, and mystery. Some have been found, others wait, hidden in darkness. Their stories written not in ink, but in salt, steel, and time. And as sonar pulses echo across the ocean floor, the voices of those who vanished seem to answer, faintly, eternally, from the depths, still on patrol.